So we're continuing, that was last week. We are continuing our sermon series called Await. And it's like an Advent calendar, right? And in Advent calendars, you get to open up a little gift each day, and it kind of sustains you as you wait desperately for Christmas to come, right? And this is showing us God's gifts from a loving Father type of thing for us. And last week we looked at a gift of the ornament, which we connected to our baptisms, that we know that no matter what may come, that in our baptisms, that God is always there with us and for us and will see us through. This week, we're actually looking at the Nativity. Now this week, I'm dealing with a bunch of interesting stuff outside. It's a different interesting ideas. The main idea that I'm going to be dealing with is one of like a snow globe. All right, a snow globe. Does anyone have any Christmas snow globes that they put outside? Think about the tyranny of the snow globe, right? Think about this for a second. Let's say you lived in that snow globe. Everything is nice and peaceful for most of the year, right? You're in a box somewhere in an attic or storage, and then out comes, and then as soon as you reach in to grab that snow globe, what do? You turn it around and just cause chaos all around, and then you revel in its beauty. Right? No one's laughing at that joke. I think it's funny. But that's all of a sudden there's just chaos and that, and they're look, it looks like snow. That's all over there, and it's giant pieces of hail coming down on the little town and all that stuff. But think about that. In Genesis chapter 1, God created the world. It's that snow globe, right? He created the world and it was beautiful. But there was a problem. Chapter 3 came in and the fall came in, and it's almost like the world was turned upside down. Right? The world was turned upside down, and all of that snow and all the stuff that's in a snow globe is down at the top of that, and it's upside down. And then what ended up happening in that upside down world, in that topsy-turvy world, we began to build foundations into that top material that is there. They began to build and all this stuff. Now, what's going to happen when everything's put back to rights, right? I'm beginning to think that idea, we can connect that idea really strongly to the wrath of God. I think that's what it is. So the problem is, I usually try to have something funny up here, all that stuff, and I don't have anything that's a lot funny, like all this stuff. So sorry, this is the way it is today. But I kind of liken this idea to do you guys ever, on TikTok and YouTube, I've gotten into watching home inspectors. I don't know if you've ever watched any of these home inspectors on TikTok and all that stuff, but they're fascinating. What they do is they go into homes that are flipped, all that. So someone will flip the phone, and then they just point out everything that's wrong in them from top to the top, right? It's over there, and it's just you watch that, and you're just oh my goodness, these flippers, they're just trying to make a quick buck off this house, and so they're trying to flip it as fast as they can. Watch out if you're looking for homes. Make sure you get a good inspector, right? Is what I've learned from watching all these things. But I was watching this one guy, and he's this flip looks pretty good. Looks over, and then he went into the attic, and all the main joists for the roof and the ceiling and all that were all crispy and carbonized. There had been a fire in the house, or at least in the attic, right? And the house looked perfect until he went up there, and he's oh my goodness. And he took one of the boards and barely pushed it, and it crumbled in his hands. That's a major structural element of the house, right? And he's oh my goodness. And then this one guy, he goes, I get it. Open floor plans are beautiful. And I think they're beautiful too. If you've ever been to my house, my wife and I built our house, it's an open floor plan. It's a millennial paradise, right? It's just a big giant open floor plan. That's all the house is. Bedrooms on each side, big room in the middle. That's all it is. But people will take these homes from the 70s. All my friends growing up grew up in the same style of home that is a kitchen with a big wall, living room, right? And then you had like bedrooms on the end. You guys know what I'm talking about. Everyone had this house, right? There for a while. Well, the popular thing now with flippers is to buy one of those, take out that wall between the living room and the kitchen. Right? They take out of that wall, and they don't put any kind of structural things or anything like that. Like, that wall was structural. What are you doing? Right? And this one guy, he said that, he goes, if you measure it, the beam going across there is 3 inches lower than it is on either side. Like, that's not good, is it? That's like, it's like, what's going on? Now let me ask you a question. Let's say you bought one of those homes. Well, you bought one of those homes, and in 5 years, everything seems to go, and all of a sudden, there's some new sounds that you hear in the house. All of a sudden, like, something comes over, and you're like, ooh, there's a leak in my roof or something like that, right? And you get up, and you have a roofer come up there, and he's like, you don't need just a new roof. You need you need a new roof. You're not just the tile, like, you are all the way up there. You need all of it, or heaven forbid, right? But like, you're in there one day and part of it collapses, right? Like, because it can't handle that weight and all that stuff. Now, hear me right here. If that happened to you or a friend or something like that, would that not feel like the wrath of God? Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? Like, it's like I back pre like years ago, Chris. Some of you are new. My name's Chris. Hi. Like, that's years ago, Chris. I was always like, sin, and like, sin happens to, yes, I am sinful, but those people out there are so much more sinful than me, and like, sin equals all this, like, that's true. But the truth is, I think there's a lot of times we're like that flipped house, where the wrath kind of comes onto us. It may not be directly our problem, but there's so much structural stuff into the patterns of the world and the patterns and the power of the world. What we're talking about today, there's so much stuff that's stuck and have been built on the power of Babylon, right? That all of a sudden, when God comes in and puts everything back to rights, it feels like wrath. Because all this stuff that we have been sustained on, right? For those of you who know, I write all my sermons with my buddy Mark. He's a pastor out in Tampa, much better at the job than I am, just to let you guys know. Like, just generally, just overall a better pastor, more loving, more competent, all that stuff. But I know somebody like, no, that's not. Listen, you haven't really met the man, all right? I've met the man. It's like, you are what these people want, right? You are what they want. But I'm coming and watching here is like watching a fever dream, and it's just like, ooh, that's fun, right? But what we came up with together was talking about, like, he and I both have the same problem in our homes. We're not the best cleaners. And like, we're not the best cleaners. And when we clean, like, and we clean the house, it's like, I clean the house. I'm putting things away, which means I take the clutter here and put it there and close, like that. I do that activity. But then what happens? I come home, Coley comes home, and I'm like, hey, I cleaned, right? And how long does it take? Like, she's like, this is not cleaning. And she gives me the look. You guys know what I'm talking about, the look. Now, it's not purposefully coming out as wrath. It just is, right? Like it's just coming out as like, oh, I'm sorry, I just don't know how to clean good. I'm sorry. That's like over there, and it comes out as wrath. That's the idea that we're kind of playing with today, of kind of what the wrath of God looks like, and how the Nativity sets things apart. That's a big intro into all of this, but we're dealing with an idea that is fairly new to me, and I've been reading a lot more about it, about the wrath of God being more established in crumblings of our infrastructures of power around us, because that's what we're talking about, this power around us. So let's get into Babylon. So last week we talked about Assyria, and you remember Assyria, he had good King Hezekiah over God's people. He was scared. He got sick, and he got scared that Assyria was going to come and and attack him, and he prayed to God earnestly, and God showed the nation favor then, and the king of Assyria was actually assassinated by his own son, right? But right behind Assyria, we now have Babylon. And Assyria is awesome. Like, it's this amazing town, amazing like city and power, but it's really only amazing in its military might. Babylon is amazing in all ways. Babylon had the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Have you ever heard of that before? One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. They had this beautiful, like, and prestige nature to all of these things. Oh man, hold on. I went down to find my notes, and it was like a sermon from 4 years ago, for like 3 weeks ago, I mean. So that wasn't fun. So Babylon, like, they had all this beauty of their own power there. They had the glory of these gardens. They're trying to make their own Eden there, right? They had the beauty in their leadership. Babylon viewed their kings like they had the power of the gods. We're going to read a section here, and you'll find that their king is named after their god, Marduk, right? So then they had the beauty in their strength, that they were the most powerful military in the entire world. So they had it all. They had the beauty of, like, these gardens and their home places. They had the beauty in leadership and their beauty in strength. And King Hezekiah, he was kind of smitten with the Babylonians. He's like, you guys know where it's at. And he saw them kind of as a threat. And he's like, you know what I can do? I can placate them. And you know what he did to placate them? We're going to find out in 2 Kings chapter 20. This is more of a narrative form of Isaiah. And it says this in 2 Kings chapter 20. At that time, Marduk-Balaam, the son of Baldan, king of Babylon, sent Hezekiah letters as a gift because he had heard of Hezekiah's illness, right? So Marduk, see, that's the name of the god right there. And so Hezekiah, he received the envoys, the letters, and all the things, and he showed them all that was in his storehouses, all the silver, all the gold, all the spices, all the fine olive oil, his armory, everything found among his treasures. There was nothing in his palace or in all his kingdom that Hezekiah did not show them. All right. So was this a good move or a bad move? No, yeah, you can tell. It's how it's written. Like the author's like, oh, this isn't going good, right? Like, it's going over there. Yeah, it's bad. Like, what's he doing? He's trying to show Babylon, hey, man, we're not that different, you and I. We have a lot in common. We both have power and all that stuff. Why not? Don't mess with us. This is one of my core things I've been working on for a while now. Well, core idea. Because I always struggled, why did God's people go into exile in Babylon? Why did that happen? I believe the reason why it happened is that they wanted to be Babylon. They wanted to be powerful. They wanted to matter. They wanted to be great, right? Like they wanted all these things. And God kept trying to take them from that. It's like, no, go this other way. And I think finally it was just a relenting. It's like, fine, if you want to be Babylon so bad, then you can be Babylon. Hear that? Like that's tough. That's tough for us. So look at what Isaiah says to him here. Then the prophet Isaiah went to the king Hezekiah and asked, what did these men say and where did they come from? And you know Hezekiah did this. He's like, well, like they came from a distant land. They came from way over there. And Isaiah's like, these dudes were from Babylon, weren't they? Like, what did they see from your palace? And he's like, they saw everything in the palace. There is nothing amongst my treasures that I did not show them. You think Isaiah probably wrote what Jan read a little bit ago right after that. Like, he's like, oh God, like that's, like, he's just like, what is going on? Like, why are you doing this, Hezekiah? You want all these things so great. And I think that's a great picture where we can find ourselves in the story here. We can find ourselves wanting the power and beauty and the power of Babylon, right? We can find ourselves wanting those things because we do that all the time. When we try to make our own Edens, You know, we try to make our own Edens by having the beauty all around us, making sure our wealth is good. You know, we try to lift up our political leaders and try to make them as powerful as the gods. We've got to cool it on that. We do. Like we gotta watch out for how much power we give to our political leaders, right? In our own strength. I mean, if you're watching news every night, turn on a movie, all right? Turn on a movie. There's a lot, listen, I make fun of those Hallmark Christmas movies forever, but if that gets you off the news, watch the mess out of those Hallmark movies, all right? If you want to know what the plot line for the ones playing tonight, I'll let you know afterwards. They all have the same one, all right? All right, we're having fun, that's good. And then we focus on the beauty of our strengths, right? We want to be mighty in the world. We want to be great in the world. We want to be able to destroy our enemies no matter what. And so we end up focusing on those beauties of Babylon, like the beauty of leadership and the strength there. And we end up putting all those pillars of power in that upside down snow globe and going, look at the world I have created, right? Look at the world. And I think that's what Isaiah is talking about and why this is so scary. Because he's talking to Babylon. He goes, wail, for the day of the Lord is near. It will come like destruction from the Almighty. Because of this, all hands will go limp. Every heart will melt with fear. Terror will seize them. Pain and anguish will grip them. They will writhe like a woman in labor. They will look aghast at each other, their faces aflame. You know, it's scary stuff. And we skip down a little bit more and see the day of the Lord is coming. It's a cruel day with wrath and fierce anger to make the land desolate and destroy the sinners within it. If you want to find out what it means for the day of the Lord to come, I did a sermon series back, in 2017 called The Day. And that's all about the day of the Lord. It's on our website. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. Everything's on YouTube now, right? But it's one of these things where it's talking about these things that's desolate and everything is being overturned in it. And he's addressing Babylon. But he's addressing what that wrath of God looks like. That it sounds scary. It sounds like there's no hope in it at all. But I think it's like that upside down snow globe. And if God does something to begin to correct the world, it'll look like wrath. It'll look like wrath. Because if we just scroll down a little bit, if I go back up, we're still in the same section. He's just skipping a few lines here. It says in Isaiah 14, but the Lord will have compassion on Jacob. Once again, he will choose Israel and who will settle them in their land. Foreigners will join them and unite with the descendants of Jacob. That doesn't sound like wrath. That sounds like compassion, right? That sounds like compassion. So how do we line that up? How does the compassion and the wrath line up like that? Why one sentence says one thing and the other one says another? I think that gets us to our gift that we're given today. And that's the Nativity. The Nativity. Because I think it's the part that wraps up all of this wrath. Because the Nativity comes into the scene like an explosion, right? It's just this earth-shattering event. I know what you're saying. You're like, whatever. And you're like, and you start quoting like Christmas songs. I mean, you're like, no cry he makes. No cry. That's not an explosion on this. They're like, no cry he makes is not in the Bible, all right? It's just talking about the peace. I think the no cry he makes is more of a reflection on us. When we realize in the midst of the explosion of the world around us and everything going back to rights, that at the foot of the manger and the cross, that there is peace there. That when everything is collapsing all around us, there's able to be peace right in that middle section there. And that's why this is an explosion, because everything is wrong about the Nativity. This is why we were joking with Kevin earlier that, throughout the Christmas season, one Sunday at a time, I destroy beloved Christmas stories to everybody, because everything is wrong about the Nativity. Because we love building, it causes havoc because we love building structures upon the powers of Babylon, the powers of the world. But think about who was at this nativity. Who was there? Who should have been there? All the Pharisees, the chief priests, the leaders of the law, they should have been there, right? But who was there instead? Magi from the east bringing 3 gifts. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, right? Have you ever thought about something? Were the Magi followers of Yahweh? Maybe. But what'd you say, Ed? Yeah. I didn't say it. That was all Ed. Were they? What sand in the face to the religious elites? What sand in the face of ourselves when we begin to say, you don't believe just like me, you're out. It's explosion, right? Explosion sitting around that thing when the ones that should have been there weren't, and the ones that probably shouldn't have been there were there with gifts, with bells on, you could say, right? Then you think about all the kings and the ruling authorities, like they all should have been there. Herod and his family, the Pharisees. Remember the Pharisees, how they were looking down at that poor widow, putting her mite in the box. They should have been there, like that. They all should have been on their knees in front of that manger, and yet, who's there? Shepherds. Now, I tried to ruin shepherds for all of you guys last year and the year before. Let's see if we can do it again, all right? Shepherds. It's like, why is it so weird? Because the shepherds are like sweet. Oh, yeah, they're like shepherds. Oh, you're so sweet. Like, quit. Like, back in that day, why were there walls and gates around towns and cities? To protect them, right? Where were the shepherds? They're outside. Why are they outside the protected gates? It's because the gates are protecting the people inside from them. Like that's, in Roman law, shepherds were not able to have a witness in court because they were fundamentally unreliable. Kings should have been there, and it's shepherds. It's an explosion that comes in, and it's what it is God is taking that snow globe that has been resting for eons upside down, and he's turning it back around, putting it back to rights. And it's causing all of this wrath, you could say, as everything's being put back to rights. But the beautiful part about it is that the story of Jesus coalesces in 2 points. One at the incarnation at the beginning, and the other is in his cross. And it's beckoning us to come in and sit and bow down and see our humble origins in the foot of both of those places. And when we find ourselves beckoned by the Spirit into those places, well, it doesn't matter how much chaos is being flung around us at the world, but we can find peace there, knowing that God will never leave us or forsake us. Knowing that God is for us no matter what, that we may have put power and we put considerable wealth in trying to build the foundations on the Babylons around us. But right there, with shepherds and foreign magi, and with God who created the whole cosmos, in the arms of a girl who had him probably a little too young, you know, and with just a carpenter, you have the creator of the universe sitting right there. And I think as we look at our nativity sets all throughout our homes and our yards, we don't set them up as another pillar of power saying, you guys need to recognize that I'm a Christian. But we set them up as a reminder to ourselves that as the world collapses around us, here is peace. And here is joy. And on Christmas, for a pastor, Christmas Eve is the most stressful time because you guys have expectations and they're hard to meet. But for me, after it's all done, and I go into my house as a sweaty mess because I have to wear like coats and all that stuff, and it's hot in Florida. And I sit down in the dark house with a lit Christmas tree, even amongst chaos, I know everything's fine. So have peace amongst the chaos, everybody, because the Lord is with us. Amen.